Hey, welcome back, everybody. Mark from Rams Up here, and I have a returning guest, John Capotorto. John Capotorto of New York. I had to say it twice, make sure I get it right. And hey, John, reintroduce you everybody to where you are, where you live, and how you became a Rams fan, real quickly.
I live in New York. This is my apartment here in Upper East Side of Manhattan. I've been a Ram fan since the early '70s. So I've been a Ram fan for a very long time, and I know people are tired, at least in my family, hearing the story as to how I became a Ram fan. But the first game I saw on TV as a kid was the Rams losing to the Vikings in a playoff game, and this was the days of the fearsome foursome, Roman Gabriel, the old time Rams on a black and white TV, and their uniforms were just awesome, and the helmets especially. And from that point on, I became a Ram fan. And during the '70s, they just, even though they constantly broke my heart, it cemented my fandom. And over the years, it's only gotten stronger. And obviously, the greatest show on turf, and this last version, and to make things, even better for me, my son has also become a pretty big Ram fan himself. So we're watching games together every week, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that happens a lot. The father-son connection with following their sons following their dad's team. That's kind of cool. Yeah, so John was on. I don't know when you were on. It's been several months, and he reached out to me, asked if he could come back on and talk more Rams football. And it's a perfect time of year to do it, right? There's a lot going on, and fortunately, we had some news break, so we have some definite things to talk about. Why don't we start there? This Stafford deal. We don't know the nature of the deal, but it's a good day for Rams fans to have him coming back, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said to you last week, in preparing for this call and this talk, I was a little wasn't sure, because I didn't know where the direction of the team was going, and if obviously we're going to go away from Stafford, that would be a totally different direction. And obviously, at that point, depending on who replaced him, it wasn't going to be one of those moments where you just put all your chips in the table and go for it like we did in 21. But now with Stafford coming on board, at least for a year, but from what I'm hearing, it's more than a year that they agreed to. And you've got to, that's your window. I mean, really, that's your window. So this is it. I think they really have to go all in.
Yeah, and if you listen to Jordan Rodriguez's interview the other day, Ian and I talked about it, and it was very enlightening. And the Rams, I think you alluded to it, were kind of in a precarious spot, not in a really negative way, but just a decision making process they had to be going through, considering, okay, we bring back Stafford, and then if we don't bring him back, what does that mean? Do we find a bridge quarterback, but we may miss the window with all these great young players? So thankfully, they all figured it out, and I think it's probably going to be for 2 years, because the rumor I heard is the Giants, I believe, were offering them 2 years, like 90 million or something like that. So yeah, but I think it's perfect for Stafford to come back for 2 years. They get all these guys on their rookie contracts, and go get some free agents.
And as complex as the McVay offense is, whoever you brought in, even if you brought in, the self-proclaimed genius Rodgers, it was going to take a while for him to understand the McVay offense. So it wasn't going to be smooth sailing, that's for sure, no matter who you brought in. I mean, the only other person that would not have missed a beat would have been Jimmy G. But there he just doesn't have the ability. With all due respects, he's definitely a great backup quarterback, and in a lot of ways, he brought the 49ers to the Super Bowl, and he would beat us every week except for that one important week that he wasn't able to. So he's definitely serviceable, but he's not Matthew Stafford. And when Matthew Stafford is on and he's protected, I don't think there's anyone out there that could give the Rams a better chance of winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and what concerns me about Aaron Rodgers is, I just could see the potential for instant regret as far as him entering into the Rams culture, the Rams locker room. And I don't know, it could work out, but there's a big difference between Stafford and Rodgers when it comes to relating to teammates, the leadership ability, and all those things, which are really, really important, especially with a young football team, right?
Well, Mark, I saw it here, in New York when Rodgers was obviously quarterbacking the Jets for these last 2 years. His body language, the way he would throw his hands up when one of his receivers, would either drop a ball or not be where he thought they were supposed to be. The body language was such that I can't see the team, going to war with him. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that, obviously the guy he's a Hall of Famer and he's got incredible ability. But at this stage of his career, he's more trouble than he is a solution.
Right. Well, and fortunately, that's water under the bridge. Matthew Stafford's coming back, and
Exactly.
we have our left tackle, and I did
Very
a
important.
yeah, I did a little bit a few days ago. Number one on the list. It's pretty obvious. Number one and two on the list, I should say, Matthew Stafford and Alaric Jackson. So now we got those two issues solved. What's next for you on the Rams to-do
Well,
list?
and I think you guys have mentioned it in a couple of your shows. The Rams are about, in my opinion, a couple of players on defense away from really having a top-notch elite defense, and that could actually shut the other team down. And we saw that during the last few games of the season, and where the other team didn't score over 20 points. So I still cry over the whole Ernest Jones decision, because I really feel that with him back there, and not to take anything away from the other guys that filled in, they did an incredible job. But with Ernest Jones back there, and we saw it when he went to Seattle. With Ernest Jones back there, I'm not so sure that Saquon has those two games that he had against us. I just feel he would have filled some of those gaps that were back there. But at the same time, and I say this to my Giant friends here in New York, the Rams didn't win a Super Bowl this year thanks to the Giants. Giving away Saquon really killed the Rams indirectly.
Right.
So without Saquon, I don't think the Eagles beat. And even with Saquon, I still wake up in the middle of the night thinking that the Rams should have won that game with a little bit more of a little bit more luck. We listen, that 3rd and 2 will always stick in my mind, like I'm sure it does in everybody else's mind. Rams fans.
and I've beat this to death already, but the ball hit the ground 5 times in that game, and the Eagles took advantage of those 5 times the ball was on the ground, and the Rams didn't.
And you know what, Mark? And we still almost won.
Right.
If you really think about all of the things that were lined up against the Rams in that game, and I hear it from my friends here in New York that are either Giants or Jets or other teams fans. The first thing they tell me, the Rams should have won that game. I was like, yeah, I know that's not helping me right now. That's okay. We didn't. and we move on, and let's make sure that hopefully the next time we have that opportunity, we'll be able to win. And so to answer your question, we need it's a couple of defensive players, a shutdown cornerback, in my opinion, to add to what we already have, and a linebacker, someone that's going to really take command back there. And of course, I think of when we had Jalen Ramsey as our shutdown cornerback. Obviously, he's not a linebacker, but Aaron Donald kind of was that guy that kind of made sure that the defense, the line, and especially the opponent's running back wasn't going to get too far past that line of scrimmage. But having that linebacker, and I know over the years the Rams haven't really invested in someone that's going to. Bobby Wagner was really the closest that we've had back there, and we only gave him a year. And even during that year, he led the team in tackles. It was a horrible year. He was here at the wrong time. But I think having somebody back there along with a shutdown cornerback on the defensive side, I think that will be what we need, because those kids up front, they were amazing. And was it 16 sacks in the two playoff games against pretty good offensive lines. That was amazing. And I only think they're going to get better. We're talking about a very, very young front line. So they're only going to get better. And with some veteran leadership, that would really help. So I think on the defensive side, finding a couple of free agents to give them that veteran leadership and those two players that I think they need to really get them to where they need to be.
Yeah, obviously with Roseboom potentially leaving, there's going to be a hole there. And I agree with you. I think we have a bunch of good cornerbacks. We don't have an elite cornerback. Witherspoon was probably the closest thing to that, and he's a free agent. So a lot of good players, Emmanuel Forbes, we don't know much about him yet. Darion Kendrick's coming back. Kobe Durant, he has limitations, but he steps up and plays some good football. Darius Williams, some Ram fans are, want the Rams to move on from him. But I don't know if that's a wise choice. But yeah, bringing in, and I feel like, you might want to draft a cornerback, but there's always a risk there. Find a free agent that you have NFL tape on him, bring him in, and establish him as your number one cornerback. If that's where you're going to spend your money, I think that's where I would like to see them spend it.
I agree. With the draft, I would rather they look at adding to the offense. That's where you have your veterans, right? You have the Staffords of the world, and
Right.
although Puka is young, but he already acts and plays like a veteran. So, I think on the offensive side, going out and giving Stafford additional weapons, and the one area that I think the Rams have kind of, they never had, at least with this version of the Rams, is a tight end. With all due respects to Higbee, he's been great when he's on the field. Obviously, he's had all of the Rams record, but it goes to show you how that particular position over the decades, the Rams have never had that tight end that really makes the difference that you could go to. And towards the end of the year, even when they were playing well and they were going, they were scoring and they were winning, the tight end was not really part of the game. And with Cooper Kupp not being at his best, as the year went by, it was either Puka or Puka. and,
Right.
and, and of course, obviously we depended on the run. That was great. I think run is key. But I also feel that having that additional weapon at the tight end position, and it just so happens that from what I understand, and you know better than me, there's an incredible crop of tight ends that are available on the draft, and one in particular that I've seen and seems like a player is that Mason Taylor from LSU. I don't think Warren is going to get to our number. What is it, 26? Uh,
Right.
but I do think that Taylor might drop down, and I think he would be a great addition. And he goes both ways. He's got great hands. He'll catch the ball, runs his routes very well, and he also blocks, which is the Rams' way, right? So I think a tight end and a wide receiver that is going to replace Cooper Kupp. Obviously, like everyone else, it breaks my heart that Cooper Kupp is not going to be on the Rams, but I also understand why the Rams are doing what they're doing, and it's unfortunate. I wish, in a perfect world, they would get together and come up with a restructuring of that contract, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And in order for the Rams to stay relevant and to be where they are, they need constant renewal. Every team needs constant renewal in every sport. If you kind of become stagnant, your record is going to slowly go down the drain. So it's unfortunate. He's always going to be dear to everyone's heart. That year will go down as one of the greatest in Rams history, in NFL history. What he did, to get us a trophy was amazing. So we need a wide receiver now. In that case, obviously, I don't know if the lower rounds is going to be able to produce the wide receiver that I think will be able to replace Cooper Kupp. But if there's someone available out there that they could sign at a reasonable price, that could give Stafford that additional weapon, so that people can't just focus on Puka.
Yeah, I think if you look at the draft and free agency, if you look at them both at the same time, this is what I'll say about tight ends and wide receivers. I think right now our wide receiver core, assuming Cup is gone, is really depleted. We got three guys, right? And I think the answer for me is I'd like to see them bring back Demarcus Robinson because he's that mid-range wide receiver, knows the offense, really good in the red zone. Bring him back and then use a draft pick on a wide receiver and a tight end. And you're right, there are a lot of tight ends. And we were really thrilled when the Rams made that trade last year, giving up the second round pick, but not time, so we could draft Braden Fisk, right? And I still fully support that trade, but now we pay the piper. We don't have a second round pick, and that creates a dilemma. You have that number 26 pick overall, and then your next pick is like at 90, I think. So, that's a big gap from 26 to 90, and a lot of tight ends are going to come off the board. Do you really the tight end I really like, and people are going to hate me for this, but I'm just telling you
Go
how I
for it.
feel. No, I think Harold Fanning Jr. is a difference maker in this offense. He would be incredible. Is he worth the 26th pick overall? Probably not. Would that stop Sean McVay from drafting him? Absolutely not, but I don't know what they're going to do, but I've seen some mock drafts with the Rams grabbing Matthew Golden, the Texas wide receiver at 26, maybe coming back getting a tight end later. But I think you'd have to think the Rams are going to try to maybe drop back into the second round, which may mean they pass up on a couple of receivers that I really like. But it kind of makes sense if they could drop back and add pick up a second round pick and a fifth round pick, something like that. But Les Snead will figure it out.
Yep.
But there are some tight ends, like you said later on, that might be there in the third round. Will certainly be there in the third round. I don't know if they're difference makers, but I'm sorry, man. I think if you watch Harold Fannin Jr., you could play him in the slot. You could play him as a tight end, and maybe I'm getting overly excited as we tend to do this time of year.
But that's the type of tight end that I think will make a difference, right? And we've seen it occasionally over the years with Higbee, but I also think that McVay and I know, and again, I'm not the X's and O's guys that Ian and you are. But when I watch, I don't feel there's a commitment, from McVay, unless Higbee is on the field, to look for the tight end. Now, maybe the tight end is not getting open. Maybe he's not running his routes well. Maybe Stafford just doesn't feel comfortable throwing the ball to Parkinson, for example. But I really don't think, in my mind, from what I saw this year, that they really had a commitment to going to him, to getting him the ball. Okay, he dropped the ball. Puka drops the ball too every once in a while. But you know what? They go right back to him the next time. I don't think they did that with Parkinson and with some of the other tight ends. I just feel that the commitment is not there. And that ends up limiting Stafford again to always look for either Puka or Cooper Kupp when Coop was at his best, and the other defenses, it's much easier for them to defend.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, I don't know, but I have to think a lot of that's on Stafford. And it also creates this wear and tear situation on guys like Kupp and Puka, and we've seen that too. I mean, these guys just getting hammered and getting way more touches than you'd like to see from wide receivers that are also asked to block when they're not targeted. They're in there blocking. That's a tall order for those guys.
It's a full-time job, and we've seen it. Like you said, we've seen it. The wear and tear. Let's face it, Cooper Kupp almost fell off the cliff. He was, at his best, and of course injuries, independent of wear and tear. Having major injuries doesn't help either, and not being on the field. And then I also think, like you said, it's also Stafford. It's not just McVay and his offensive design. I think it's also Stafford that's always looking for, his. I refer to them as his pet wide receivers or his pet offensive weapons, and it unfortunately ends up being that one guy. And we lucked out in the Super Bowl because that one guy was Cooper Kupp, but in his defense, he was the only guy on the field at that point. And if we were going to win the Super Bowl, the ball had to go through Cooper Kupp. But we need to and I think in my mind, when I heard McVay say that we need to diversify our offense, that's what came to mind for me, and that is to have more than one option or have more than one weapon at any given time, so that the other team, and that goes to show you how good Stafford is. The other team's defense knows exactly where the ball is going, and yet he almost had us in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah. How do you feel about what's your position on the running back position as it stands today for the Rams? And I won't color that with any suggestions. Just how do you what do you think the Rams should do at that position, if anything?
You know what? I think we're okay. I mean, I like Kyron Williams. He has to work on holding on to the ball. We had in New York. If you recall, Tiki Barber had that issue where he had fumbleitis for a while, and they worked all off season on having him hold the ball differently, higher up. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know a lot of the techniques behind the actual game of football, but all I know is that after that special training that he got, he stopped fumbling. Kyron Williams, I think, is perfectly fine. We haven't seen enough of Blake Corum, but the little that we saw, he was pretty good. And for a while there, when they were 1-4 and the season looked like it was unraveling, it's like, well, let's put Corum in there. And I think the brain trust was proven right by sticking to Kyron, and the Rams turned the season around. And a lot of it had to do with Kyron Williams. I mean, he's a player. I mean, he doesn't have the natural ability that a Saquon Barkley has. Not many running backs do. But at the same time, he's a gamer. I mean, he'll grind out those 3-4 yards on every single run. So I think on the running back situation, I think we're fine. And, Rivers, as your third option, obviously they may need to pad that room up a little bit with maybe another runner, through the draft, which the Rams, like you say, all the time always do. But I think we're okay at the running back position.
Yeah, I've seen comments on the YouTube channel and elsewhere, two schools of thought, three schools of thought, really. There's a minority that are done with Kyron Williams, which I think is just crazy.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah. And then there's another smaller group as well that would like to see the Rams draft a fullback, and I just don't see it. I don't see McVay using one of his 11 guys. He did that briefly with Ben Skowronek. That didn't really work. And, so maybe McVay will consider it again, bring in a true fullback. And then, a speed back, get something, bring in a running back in the draft probably that offers something a little bit different than Kyron and Blake. And I'm all in on that. I would like to see that. I still don't know that McVay, I think the problem McVay has is, committing to a speed back, 10 or 12 snaps a game, which means Kyron's not on the field and Blake Corum's not on the field. So, that's a bit of a dilemma too. You really have to be you have to be willing to really expand the playbook and get more guys off the bench in the game, get them snaps. And I haven't really seen that from Sean McVay yet, but I like the speed back idea. A running back that, threatens you vertically more, can go the distance, which I don't know that Kyron and Blake, either of them can really do that from what I've seen, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong on Corum.
It's hard to say, with Blake Corum, but from what I'm hearing, he's a carbon copy of Kyron.
Right.
And if that's the case, again, you're going to get that. The floor is 3 or 4 yards, which is okay. I'll take it. Every 3 or 4 yards, every 3 plays, you got a first down. Now, the other thing that, I think would be a mistake is to immediately give up on Jonah Jackson. I think we got off to a bad start with him this year. He was changing positions. He got hurt during the OTAs. And then, by the time he got back, he was playing another position, or they put him back at center. They should just decide on where they're going to put him on that offensive line, leave him there, and give him one more solid year where, he doesn't have to learn the offense. He comes in, obviously now having to prove himself because, this was such a disappointing year for him personally. I think this year we'll see the real Jonah Jackson if we give him another chance. I don't think we should move away from him. As to whether he's going to be center or he's going to be tackle, I don't know. Bo Limmer was wonderful last year. He was great, but he's got his limitations, and I think there's more of a ceiling with Jonah Jackson.
I think what's going on with Jonah Jackson is he he sees maybe the writing on the wall. Probably maybe he shouldn't. That he's going to be a second stringer and ask for that trade. And maybe it won't happen. And I hope I'm with you. I hope it doesn't happen. I don't mind paying the guy. I'm still traumatized by that one season when our musical chairs along the offensive line, everybody getting hurt. And if we do indeed trade Jonah Jackson and Joseph Noteboom leaves in free agency, you look at that offensive line depth chart, and starts getting a little scary. If someone goes down, we got Warren McClendon, KT Levinston. We don't know anything about him. Dylan McMahon. There's some bodies there, but no one that Justin Dedich, no one that I really feel that great about as a starter. If someone that goes down, so I would be willing to keep Jonah Jackson around if he's up to it, just to be a backup swing guard tackle. Center,
let him, obviously we're entering the baseball season, but just like spring training, let him win the job. Let him go out there and show why we signed him in the first place. This guy was a premier offensive lineman for the Lions, and that's why we got him. We thought we were putting together an incredible offensive line, and like I said, I think it was a combination maybe of him, taking a step back, signs a big contract. I don't have to go out and kill myself anymore, whatever. I'm not going to doubt his commitment, but in the beginning, he was also put in a position where he had, like I said, had to play he for most of the preseason, the OTAs in the preseason, he started off as a tackle, then he became a center, then he went back to being a tackle.
Yeah.
They have to settle on one thing and let him do his thing. He was a tackle in Detroit, and he was a pretty good one. Put him back in there and kind of work around with the rest of it. Avila, got better as the last year as the year went by, and kind of slowly started to look like the rookie version. And then, Dotson was Dotson. So the offensive line, I think, as long as everybody knows their role, knows where they're starting from, you've got, like I said, Bo Limmer at center. You might want to upgrade there a little bit, not because he did well. I know there's a little bit of a difference between his pass blocking and his run blocking, but he was a rookie, and he's only going to get better. And but having somebody there as well, just in case someone gets hurt. I think it's time to move on from Noteboom. I think I think we gave him all of the opportunities that he deserved over the years, and last year especially, he really didn't didn't fill in as well as he did in the previous years. When his number was called, he either would miss a block or it was a major penalty, and it was like, of course, you knew who was going to be on.
Yeah, Noteboom's been a bit of an enigma. There have been times over his career with the Rams where, he looked like the future right tackle, possibly even a left tackle. And then there's other times where you're just like, oh, geez, this is not going to work. Hey, last question before we get out of here. this backup quarterback situation, once again, we're faced with trying to figure that out. And I'd like to see them bring Jimmy G back, although, he was pretty pricey for a backup quarterback. How do you feel about that? I just feel like, you're hoping you don't need your backup quarterback, but this team, if it can make a true Super Bowl run, the last thing you want to see happen is, your quarterback go down, Matthew Stafford go down for 3 or 4 games, like happened a couple of years ago. And it's just, a dreadful, turns into a dreadful offense and we have no shot. And I think it's, before the Stafford signing, I thought the Rams might be looking at the quarterback position this year, maybe not. What do you think the Rams should do as far as addressing right now the only two quarterbacks on the roster when the league year starts, anyways, will be Stafford and Stetson Bennett?
Look, I like Jimmy G, and I like the Jimmy G signing as a backup. And if God forbid something happened to Stafford, obviously with every team out there, if something happens to their starting star quarterback, chances are they're not going to go too far. But with Jimmy G back there, you have a chance, at least in my mind. And he's got experience. He's taken a team to the Super Bowl, multiple playoff games. He has played in a similar offensive scheme when he played for the 49ers. I think as a backup, and from what I understand, a lot of the backup quarterbacks are just as expensive out there. So I personally would bring him back, especially knowing that there's not that many quarterback options down at number 26 or down in the second. We don't even have a second round pick, but third round and beyond. I would rather wait and for a better choice of quarterbacks for the future in the next couple of years. And I think the Stafford signing gives us that option where we could wait.
Yeah, I think the Rams will draft their quarterback next year. And what I like about Jimmy G, I know a lot of Ram fans aren't thrilled with him. A lot of 49er fans chuckle at the thought of Jimmy G leading the Rams into Santa Clara, but I'd feel pretty comfortable with that. And I think, again, it goes back to that culture thing. I think he's a good fit in the locker room. McVay loves him. I think the players love him, and they'll go to battle for him.
Yeah, I
And
never understood, other than the fact that he played for the 49ers, I never understood that visceral dislike of the guy.
yeah,
That
yeah,
some people have. I mean, yeah, is he Matthew Stafford? Does he have that ability to get the ball where it needs to be at any given time? No, he's got to be within, you know, he's a systems type quarterback, and um, yeah, we had that with Goff when he was here with us. But you know what? That wasn't that bad either. I mean,
right,
Goff
right,
wasn't that bad. I mean,
right.
I like Jared Goff, and I'll always root for him unless they're playing the Rams. But the bottom line is, I think Jimmy G would be a great quarterback to have as insurance, just in case Matthew Stafford gets hurt.
Yeah, he's certainly likable. He's an easy guy to root for, and yeah, I hope they bring him back. Hopefully, it's at a reasonable price. You'd think his price might be going down a little bit each year. I don't know if
You would
there's
think.
other. Yeah, right. He gets a year older because that was a hefty price tag last year to pay for a backup. But I was okay with it. And the Rams do have some cap space, but it could get eaten up pretty quickly if they go after a cornerback and perhaps a linebacker like we're hoping they do.
I hope so. Like I said, that defense is so close to being
Yeah,
elite.
yeah, and it's fun. It's a fun defense
It
too.
really
And
is. I mean,
yeah,
those two playoff games were just absolutely amazing. And I think after the Viking game, I texted you or I emailed you the next morning saying, that's going to go down as one of the best games in Ram history.
Yeah.
And with everything that was going on with the fires there in LA and having to play in Arizona, going there and putting that beating on the Vikings, and the Vikings were a pretty good team,
Yeah.
and that was an all-out beating,
Yeah.
and then you go to Philadelphia and we saw what they did. Both in the NFC Championship game and in the Super Bowl against the mighty Chiefs, the Rams came so damn close. So
Yeah.
we're not that far away,
Yeah, as I
really
said
are.
after the Super Bowl, you could make an argument, a very strong argument, that the Rams were the second best team in the National Football League the day after the Super Bowl.
You know what? It's not that far fetched, and one of the things I have to say, all of my buddies here, Giant and Jeff fans, every time they talk to me about the Rams, the first thing they tell me is that your general manager and your coach are friggin' geniuses, and they
Yeah.
really are almost overly, it's almost over the top as to how much they admire, um,
Yeah.
especially Les Snead and how he and McVay, but you got to give Snead the credit that he deserves. They go out and find these guys. That defense, going out and making that move. I personally no regrets on the Fisk move. Even when they made the move, everyone was saying that they paid too much, second round pick, they're going to regret it. Just like we regretted, giving up all those picks, when we, won the Super Bowl, right? I had no regrets because I have all the faith in the world in Snead and McVay to find those diamonds in the rough that will keep us, like I said, relevant. Again, the Pukas of the world, the Puka picks, as you
Right.
guys
Right.
as you guys call them. I'm got my fingers crossed that they're going to find a couple more. Obviously the Verse pick was amazing, a no brainer. The fact that he was there when we were picking, shame on all the other teams. But sometimes there's a lot of quarterbacks out there, and
Well,
that and that's what really filled in most of the early picks. So Verse
yeah.
ended up dropping, and we were able to snatch him.
Yeah, it's almost comical, how people can criticize, and we do it. I'm guilty of it. On this show, we're guilty of it, of criticizing McVay and sometimes Snead, and then you look at these other franchises, and
No,
they
you
look
have
at
no idea.
and they look at us and go, "Oh man, you guys are doing everything right." And that's what I keep on saying about the Rams. We are so lucky to be fans of this organization because they do everything right culturally, in the locker room, organizationally, in the community. They do everything right.
They really do.
Yeah.
They're really an organization that other teams want to copy, and that's why McVay has the coaching tree that he has already
Right.
at 39. It's amazing because people look at the Rams and say, "I want that,"
Yeah.
and let's go out and get somebody that's close to him and bring him over and have them replicate what he has done in LA.
And we see that with the Jags hiring
Yeah,
Gladstone, the scouting guy, and Liam Cohen as their head coach. And if I'm a Jags fan, I'd be pretty excited. If they
absolutely. And
if Glad
obviously you got to be patient. I think it took the Bengals a couple of years before they turned the corner. It took the Lions a couple of years before they turned the corner when they brought in a lot of the Rams.
Brad Holmes.
Yes, Brad Holmes and a lot of their, obviously along with the quarter, along with Jared Goff. But it's the culture, and I think although I'm not crazy about Campbell as a head coach, he's not my type of coach.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the Dick Vermeils of the world, and but even McVay. I mean, I always listen to when they win, and I listen to the press conferences even when they lose, and he has a way about him that makes him even at his age serious. And sometimes with Campbell, I can't take him seriously. But
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how the Lions do without how Dan Campbell does without his two coordinators both leaving the
yeah, and
leaving
and,
the
and, and let me tell you, I was very impressed with their offensive coordinator.
yeah. Oh, Ben Johnson. Yeah.
And
He might be,
him going to Chicago, I think Chicago is going to have an improvement. But you know what? Sometimes, Mark, and we learned that with Spags, right? When Spagnuolo was our coach, you could be an incredible coordinator, but that doesn't mean you're going to be a great head coach.
yeah, I know. Absolutely. Yeah. There sometimes I don't understand. Well, I probably do, but I just disagree with it. Why these guys want a head coaching job? You're the best coordinator, whether it be offense or defense, you just nail it. And then you want to become a head coach, and it's a totally different assignment.
It
It's
is.
completely different. And hey, they want to make more money. They want to be the head honcho. I get all that, but there's been plenty of coordinators that have been content to do just that, and built a legacy of doing. Remember
Yeah,
guys
like
like Ernie
again,
Zampese, Fritz
Spags,
Shermer.
Spags is a perfect example of that. I mean,
Yeah,
like I said, we were all excited, a New Jersey kid, who's going to coach the Rams after coaching the Giants and winning a couple of Super Bowls with them. And then, with the Rams, his first year was decent, almost made the playoffs. And then after that, it was a disaster. And you could tell
right.
that he was way uh, above his head. Um, and then he went back to being a defensive coordinator, and you know
Yeah,
the Chiefs are there every year. So
yeah, yeah. I don't
who
know.
knows? Who knows if Williams is going to be as good of a coach as he was an offensive coordinator? But I was very impressed with the diversity in the play calling. The Lions. Unfortunately, they had a bad day
Yeah,
against the Commanders. That there's no reason why they should have lost the game, but
yeah.
it is what it is.
Yes, something was off with that team that day.
Yep,
Yeah,
happens.
yeah. Hey, John, it's been fun. We'll have to do this once again.
Yes, always a pleasure.
I trying to get more guests back on occasion, and I'll be rotating guests in on a more frequent basis. So we'll get you back on in a
Yep.
few weeks.
Yeah,
Maybe
maybe after the either well the free agents, so that we'll see what free agents we get, and then obviously the
the
draft.
draft, right?
So
Yeah.
by then we'll
Okay.
have a good idea of what the team looks like.
Yeah, we'll do another roster review at that point. Yeah, thanks a lot for joining me out
Not a
here.
Bye bye, everybody.